And tonight, President Trump ordered the Pentagon to resume nuclear testing immediately. On his Truth Social platform, he wrote, "The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis."
Now, the state of Nevada has a long history with the testing of America's most destructive weapons.
Fox 5's Kim Pathoff is here right now with more on all this. Kim?
Yeah, the United States stopped nuclear explosive testing in 1992. Trump did not say in his post where it will resume. At the Nevada test site, 65 miles northwest of Vegas, more than 900 tests took place through 1994 when the U.S. stopped underground nuclear testing. Testing began there almost 75 years ago, January of 1951. The testing site became a tourist attraction, drawing crowds to Vegas to watch the blast and the large mushroom clouds that formed over the desert. The history of testing remains a tourist attraction. The National Atomic Testing Museum near UNLV shares decades of artifacts and stories, and Nevada remains a nuclear hub. Last week, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright was in Las Vegas discussing the impact of the government shutdown on the National Nuclear Security Administration with workers furloughed, including here in Nevada.
These are jobs of great gravity. We need to maintain our nuclear stockpile, have our adversaries confident that we have our stuff together. We have a secure and ready to deploy at a moment's notice stockpile.
And coming up at 11, the decades of testing in Nevada were not without consequence. The ongoing battle for some nuclear-era veterans to get medical care.
Kim, thank you. Also today, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced his country had conducted a successful test of a new atomic-powered and nuclear-capable underwater drone 3 days after he praised a successful test of a new nuclear-powered cruise missile.